Yoav, Fred, and myself are working together for 22 years. Last week, I celebrated with my wife our 23rd anniversary. I'm a bit confused with whom I'm wasting more time, precious time of my life. But Yoav,
yeah,
I'm speaking here about a few things, and some of it might even sound a conflict when it comes from a frog mouth. You created Artifactory. You built Artifactory as an open source project long time ago. You were very young back then. And it was kind of a best of breed solution. And in the past 4 years, 5 years, what I hear from you and what I see is that you are obsessed about the platform. So are you converting, or something has changed, or
so
what's the reason of that?
Yeah, so when I created Artifactory, it was to solve the pain of managing binaries. But like you said, binaries, they are the ones that are making the full software supply chain. So this pain expanded, and we want to provide a single pane of view for everything along your software supply chain. So this is why I'm pushing so much for a platform view.
To serve more persona. And I get that. And now, just between you and I, a platform, can you really have a best of breed experience with a platform? Or is it more like an enterprise play now?
I believe you can win on both fronts if you keep the approach of opening everything, opening up the APIs, keeping, I think, coined this phrase, too integrated to fail. This is our philosophy. Everything we do, we open up. You can also always integrate, bring on your own tools. They may compete, they may complete, but that's the JFrog philosophy.
Well, you will have now to protect what you just said. Everyone, please welcome Yoav Landman, our CTO.
Okay, so we're here to speak about software supply chain. And before we do, let's speak about the experience with your own developers today. So your developers today, they need to do much more than just coding. Their authority, their sense of their responsibility just keeps increasing to manage the application end to end. So there will be coding, of course. There will be testing and packaging and figuring out how to create a release and bundle it, and how to configure all the deployment parameters. And in many organizations also take it the full way to production, maybe configuring the Helm charts and so on, and monitoring and responding to what's going on in production. So there's a lot on their plate. And we're actually seeing even the largest JFrog customers moving to this approach because it just increases productivity so much. But there is a gap, and this gap is the gap between developers and operations. Your developers, they may know a lot of stuff, but they need the operations in order to make them more productive, basically in order to make them better operators of their software. This is a Gartner slide, or prediction, that speaks about a new concept, well, seemingly new, because I'm pretty much sure that for many of you, this is just a name. Platform engineering, which means that you're providing your developers with all the infrastructure and all the services that they need in order to become productive. So many of you in the audience, I'm sure you've been doing it from day one. This is your day job. Maybe you've created these platform engineering machines in multiple companies as you move between them. And software supply chain is I think it's the most critical. It's critical, if not the most critical part of software supply chain, because it's all about your target. It's all about creating the release. And the JFrog platform that many of you rely on is about helping you making your release faster and making releases that are more trusted and have more quality in them. And today I'm going to cover many very exciting announcements around how we expand the JFrog platform, what the new features that we introduce in order to allow your developers to be more productive, to create more trusted releases. And these announcements are going to be around 3 main areas. So DevOps, next is security or DevSecOps, and finally like the mandatory MLOps, but it's not just mandatory for the hype. You'll see that it's very, very relevant, and it's going to become very relevant for anyone. But let's start with DevOps. Okay. So before we go to the next, let's visit the past a little bit. And I think this picture is not going to be too surprising to many of you. Like you're creating a pipeline in order to create your software. And this pipeline is comprised of multiple components that are all about automation. The first JFrog slogan was release fast or die. So it was about speed, about getting there to the market as quickly as possible. And you have those enablers like infrastructure as code automation and automated testing and automated builds, and then you do it continuously. So you have CI and CD, and you connect all those islands of automations together in order to create a pipeline. But there are many challenges with this approach. Like how do you know what components got into your pipeline? How do you know if they're safe to use? How do you know what's running well? And how do you know if what you're building and what you're testing and what you're deploying is the same release? And finally, how do you even think about picking up the components that you're going to use in your software? So we need something a little bit better. We need to instill trust. And when you think about this pipeline, the pipeline is very nice. Everyone knows that we need a pipeline. But at the end of the day, we have one thing in mind, which is the software release. So that's the JFrog approach about thinking about software, watching you, trying to protect the release, trying to instill more trust into it, and make the release with the highest quality possible. That's what you think about. The pipeline, it's a vehicle. Everyone knows it's automated and it's cyclic and everything, but that's the end in mind. And when you think about the release first approach, you need to kind of inject points of control in order to make sure that the quality of the release is there. And this gives you the trust. And you want to control things like security, licensing, compliance with the process that you're expected to follow when you create a software release, and of course, quality in general. And that's not a conclusive list. You may have other things that you need to guarantee when you create your software release in your own organization. Okay. So it's not new, right? We can compare it to a traditional industry. This is the software supply chain, not software, of soft drinks. So this is really how the pipeline of Coca-Cola looks like. You have a process. You start with raw water on the left, and then there are all kinds of different processes that I'm not going to go into details, but you have checkpoints. And every checkpoint like that, somebody signs off that you applied some quality gate, and that quality gate reaches all the way to the right to your release, which is the bottle. And you know that the water in this bottle are the same raw water that you started with on the left side. So you have a full trust, full visibility to this supply chain. And we want to have the same thing in software. So this is the slide that lights up the audience for me. So yeah, a lot of white. This is a 2011 view from a book called Agile ALM. And what it shows how you have different control points or quality gates. It actually speaks about taking your release. So this is really a release-first approach back in 2011, taking your release and promoting it between different repositories in Artifactory, wherever a repository signifies a target environment, like development and system testing and production mirror. I don't think anyone calls it like that today, more staging and production. And this is very common. Just by a show of hands, how many of you are running systems that apply to this pattern? Okay, so quite a few. It's a very common pattern. But this pattern is, I will show you, it's actually lacking some important key points in it. It's very pragmatic, but it has some issues. So if we try to abstract this release-first approach, we have a source environment, and then we do some quality check on the release, and after we can promote it to the target environment if we're happy with the results. But the question that arises is, how do we make sure that we have, I mean, it's there, but it's not visible. It's coded somewhere, but you cannot see this process anywhere. It's just hidden somewhere in a workflow that somebody that created your CI/CD process wrote. The other thing is about trust. How do you know, if you go back in time, that the quality check that you applied on the checkpoint was not tampered with, that it can be really trusted in a past view? And finally, integrity. How do you know that what you end up on the right side is the exact same release that you have on the left side? And what we're going to show you today is how we fix it for you. And it's very simple. What we're adding is we're taking the same process, we're doing the quality check, so we're analyzing the state of the release, and then we're doing some validation. We have a rule, for example, that all your test coverage are beyond 80% or something like that. And then we sign it off with an evidence that we attach to this quality check, and we deploy it to Artifactory with the release itself. So we'll get into more details now and also in the next session where we'll actually demo it and what it looks like in the JFrog platform. But really, when you think about this approach, and this is something we call the 7-step approach, it's pretty much applies to every software release. There may be more or fewer steps, but in general, it kind of captures the full software release. So you have the curate phase where you select your materials or components, and then you're doing the creation, you code, you build the application. You have the package phase. This is the first time that you have a release, and then you promote it across different quality gates. Finally, you distribute it, and next you distribute it closer to the runtime, and then you deploy it, and finally you run it, you operate it. So this applies everywhere, and you can take those 3 steps of analyze, and validate and sign. There's a bit of a delay. And you can apply it across each and every step. I'm not going to go on every box here, so don't worry. But if we take the promotion, for instance, so let's get a very practical example. In the analyze phase, you may be doing a security scan to check there are no vulnerabilities. And then in your validation, you have a policy that says, if I have criticals, no go, I cannot promote it. But if everything is good, or even if everything is bad, I can capture this as an evidence and sign it and put it into Artifactory after I do the promotion or after I fail the promotion. And the way you can think about it is you can think about a release. So this is the release first trust approach, moving all the way from the left, from dev, all the way to the runtime, leaving behind a trail of evidence that you can attach to it. And those evidence, they cannot be repudiated, and they can be fully trusted, and they cannot be modified because they are signed. And this provides you the full compliance, the full visibility that you need to have about your release in one single place. The practical way that we did it is we took a concept that many of you are using today, which is the release bundle. This is the way of JFrog to speak about an application, really signed bundles or files. And we added the mechanism to attach signed evidence on top of this release. And we will see it in the next session, exactly how it works, and share with you all the details. So this was DevOps. So I'm moving on to security, or DevSecOps. Okay. So taking this 7-step approach further, the issue with security is that your developers are being attacked. They became the target. They are the most easiest target to attack. And in the security session, we will actually look at every step like that and the type of threats, the type of maliciousness that attackers are trying to apply there. And they have 2 goals. The first one is to inject themselves into your supply chain, and then they can take over resources there. Or worst, end up in your release. And we all know about examples where this happened, this is like the worst thing that can happen, because they end up attacking your own customers. And the role of JFrog is to protect you all the way end to end at every point, because we allow you to have this control at every step of the release. This is what we have today, okay? We have X-ray and advanced security, which are doing software composition analysis that you can run on your binaries, but also also in the IDE, we allow you to run the same scanners. Some of them are very, very advanced. They can detect secret or detect the applicability of a certain CVE. And we allow you to run them in your IDE, in your Git, and of course, on binaries. But we're actually shifting more to the left right now. And we're going to cover the curate phase, and we're going to cover the create phase. So let's speak about the curate phase. So the curate phase is where you pick the components that are going to end up with your release. So again, I'm comparing this to the traditional industry, and you have this notion of quality control compared to quality assurance. So quality assurance is where you already have your pipeline, and you have some checks to see that the product is okay and it matches what you expect. But really, quality control is saying, there are some things that I never want into my pipeline. There are some goods that are never going to enter the production line ever. And if I have some sour apples in my pipeline, I will eradicate them completely. And we are speaking here about package curation. It's about blocking unwanted software components from the get-go, before they even enter your software supply chain. So we fix it before it's even broken. And the nice thing about it, and this is, of course, coming from your demand many times, is that it gives you a very practical approach to security, because you may not even know what you want to do, but there are some ground rules in the organization that say, no go, this is not getting into my release ever. Malicious package? No, never. I'm not going to ever want to see it as part of my pipeline. And in the rare situation that I will give a waiver. But in a general way, I want to apply this blockage in the entry point. And yes, sometimes I will let components in that will become malicious, that will become bad, that will become sour, and then X-ray and advanced security will find them. But it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot faster to fix them on the left. So this is package curation. We're going to show you all the details and the announcements, the product announcements in the security session. So this covers the curate phase. And the next thing that we're going to add is we're going to add source code scanning, or SAST. And I don't have time to cover that in this session, but I can promise you that we will show you the differentiated JFrog approach for source code scanning, which is always about giving you the best quality, not necessarily the largest amount of findings. So that's around SAST. And we're also going to move to the right, not in this event, but stay tuned. It's very soon. Okay, so moving on with shifting left. And what we're doing, and I will show you a short demo in a second, we're shifting lefter than left. So what I mean by that is that we're protecting the desktop, we're protecting the workspace of your developers. So when you think about, and this is something that we see many of you struggling with, I mean, you have everything figured out in your pipeline, but you ask us, okay, how do I make sure that my developers are also connected to JFrog as a single source of truth for everything they do with software? And normally this means that you want to have the JFrog CLI installed, you have to get your software SDKs and software tools from one place, including your IDE, including the IDE plugins that you want your developers to use. You want your IDE to be connected to JFrog, to do the software curation, to do the security scanning, to be configured to resolve from Artifactory out of the box. And you also want the actual machine package managers like the Python package manager or Node or whatever to be configured to deploy and resolve from Artifactory. And that's an undertaking that is hard to do. A new trend that we're seeing in the market is, and again, we're seeing a lot of interest by you today especially in the last year around this trend, is the world of cloud development or environments or CDEs. You see there are many players in this domain like Replit and Strong and GitHub code spaces and so on. And the idea behind those players is that initially they were around, similar to DevOps, they were around speed, they were around efficiency. You can get a very strong machine, click of a button, it's consistent between all your developer teams, but it starts to shift towards security and compliance. Because once you provision your development environment to your developers, first of all, it's in the cloud, they don't take anything home, but it's also safe and consistent, and you can make sure that they are connected to the JFrog platform from the get-go. So we started to work with several partners around this approach, and meaning that we integrate the JFrog platform out of the box to these tools. And I want to show you one of the first partners that we worked with, which is Coder. I'm going to show you a demo. And this initial effort is actually formalizing the SDK that we're going to release to other partners, which is providing the same capability out of the box. So let's move on to show demo. Cool. So yeah, it even remembered what I tried to do. So let's get a workspace, call it swampUP demo. Let's zoom out a little bit. Create the workspace. So what it's going to do now, it's going to provision a full development environment in the cloud, connected to JFrog. It's actually using the CLI as the one that is doing most of the heavy lifting, getting a one-time token from Artifactory, meaning that there is a token baked into this development environment that is not good anywhere else. And I'm just going to let it finish. I can fire up a local VS Code that will be connected to this environment, but in this case, I'm going to fire a cloud version of VS Code, code server, and I should have my small JavaScript project here, node project, and it's already connected to JFrog. So you can see this start extra scanning. I have this old Express dependency here. I'm going to start scanning. I had to do nothing. It's already connected. It's going to reach out to the JFrog platform. And oops, I see that I have some high vulnerability here. Let's go to the JFrog tab. So open the package.json. So Express itself is actually medium, but anywhere, if I click here, I see that we always highlight Express. These are transient dependencies. And I can even watch the CVEs, and it's going to give me the explanation of how I should handle those CVEs and what they're about. This is coming again from JFrog. And I know that the latest Express is 4.18.2. So let's try an update. Save it, and let's do an npm install to force it. So it's going to update the dependencies. And if you have a sharp eye, I'm sure you saw that it's getting it from JFrog, but you don't have to. So I'll show you npm config get registry. And this is the JFrog URL right here. Okay. So now I can rescan. And my developer, or myself in this case, yeah, your project was scanned. We didn't find any security issues. So we're all good. We can close this. And this is how easy it is. And I actually have another workspace here. So let's go. We are in the workspaces tab. swampUP demo old. Let's look at it for a second. And I can see that in this case, the JFrog scanned the actual development environment. It scanned the actual desktop, and I can see that the Docker that was used to fire up this desktop, by itself, it's vulnerable. So it has 6 critical, and I have a development environment which is not safe to use. I can even go to JFrog. Hopefully, I'm logged in. Yeah, and I can see the actual vulnerabilities that are part of my development environment. So guys, this is how easy it is to get the JFrog environment out of the box pre-configured and also get information of the security, not just of about your project, but about the actual environment. So can we switch back to presentation? Thank you. So this was about shifting even more to the left. Yes, we saw. Okay, we reached the point of no return. We have to speak about MLOps. Okay. Yeah, so let's start. So this prediction is really shocking. I never saw a prediction with 90%, ever. 90% of your applications are going to use machine learning. This is huge, like this is unheard of. And when you think about it, I'm sure you're kind of not surprised. You're seeing the whole investment made by the cloud investors, the cloud providers, and you're seeing companies that, you're seeing open source models that are being released thousands a week. This is not even versions, but new type of models. But really what we will also show you in the demo, just to get your appetite, is that the barrier for your developers to embed machine learning is almost zero. It's so easy, just so easy to put machine learning, and your developers are very creative. So if they haven't come to you, they will come to you and they will tell you, please enable us with machine learning. We need that in our applications. There's a lot of things that we want to add to our applications. We're seeing the same personally in JFrog. But there is a gap, and this gap reminds me a lot of the early DevOps days where the technology was there, but the practices were not. And when you look at a normal machine learning flow, so normally it starts with collecting the data. So this is the data ops, and then you're doing some cleanup and transformation, and you create feature sets, which is about, this is how you're going to train your model, and you store them and you version them. And then you move on to the phase where you're actually creating the model, you're training it, you're going to need probably some strong machines with GPUs. Then you're doing the validation, and once you're happy, you create a model. Normally, it's not just one file. I'll show you in a second. And you version it, and you store it somewhere so that you can actually deploy it and serve it, which is the runtime ops phase. So you distribute it, you deploy it, you serve it, which is the run phase, and then you monitor, you get back the results, and if your predictions are not what you thought they are, or maybe they deteriorated over time, you're going to have to recreate the model and repeat the whole process again. But the guys that are doing all of that, these are the data scientists, these are the Python programmers. They don't necessarily have the skills where they need, like the blue rectangles there, the blue boxes, are where they need DevOps. They cannot do it by themselves. They need the tools. They need the platform engineering that comes, that needs to come behind for responsible machine learning management. And the green one is where JFrog has a very strong play, even today, and mainly around management of the model itself. Okay. And this model is never alone. It's not just one file. And yeah, you can see one of the screens is flickering, so it's true. It's not just one file. I call it model plus plus. Why plus plus? Because it's incomplete, really incomplete, without a set of files that are part of the quality of your model. It's the training data that you used to create the model. It's the feature sets that you created in order to have the clean data set for training. It's your training dependencies. If you're developing a model, 99% you're going to use Python. There are Python dependencies that you need in order to create the model. It's the hyperparameters of the model. It's the runtime dependencies of the model. Sometimes it's not the same Python libraries or not the same binaries that you're going to have to apply to this model in order to run it. And most of the time, you also need a container. Like the model by itself, it cannot run. You need to give it some kind of a REST endpoint and put a container together with it. So this makes a bundle of an application. And finally, there's the output that comes out of your model. There's a lot of data to manage around that. It's all binaries. So this is like natural. You have to manage those binaries in a single place. And what we're going to show you today is how we enable trusted and secure machine learning models. We are applying the DevSecOps and DevOps practices to MLOps, and we're adding a flow which is opinionated around managing models in a secure way. And to do that, we are doing a couple of things. And again, in the next session, we will actually show you how we do it, and we show you a demo and share the details with you. But first of all, it's around hosting. It's about model versioning. It's about sharing the model between different teams in the organization. It's about release bundling the model with all those dependent files that are part of the quality of your model. And sometimes your model, well, some of these files, your model is unusable without them. And finally, it's providing this model traceability around how you created the model. Then there's the remote model hosting. Many foundation models are being used today from platforms like Hugging Face. Your developers want to bring them in so they cannot be mutated. You cannot depend on the latest version. You may get totally different predictions if you get an unpredictable update, but also these are huge files. The Facebook Llama model, for instance, the basic one is 10 gigs. You don't want your developers to be pulling that from the internet every time. And finally, it's about model scanning. Scanning for compliance, for licensing issues, but also scanning for security. And in the security session, we will share with you our research team findings about what's happening really in this field. Like, it's a race, and the attackers are also looking actively into this field to attack your developers. Then the last thing you want to have is you want integration out of the box with all the popular frameworks, Hugging Face Transformers, and MLflow, and SageMaker, and Jupyter Notebook, and LangChain, and all those very popular frameworks that your developers will be using. So we have all that in pipe for you. Basically, we're showing you today how we take the JFrog platform, expand it to the left, expand it to machine learning, expanding to more trust in your releases, and giving you an end-to-end secure software supply platform.